Hello, friends, and welcome to Worldbuild with Us, the podcast where we create fantastical worlds with help from you, our listeners. My name is Rob Hilferty, and I'm here with my co-hosts, Daniel Quinn and Courtney Staples. On today's episode, you've waited all year for it's time for the Spooky Jam. This year, we're doing something a little bit different. We're going to be giving you a double feature. That's right. We've got the Spooky Monster Mash first, where we're going to be creating a panoply of villains and monsters that we are going to then insert into the following horror jam, which is going to be next week's episode. So I, for one, am very excited to make these iconic monsters and see how the Monster Mash kind of treats us. Hopefully we get an appropriate monster this time, and not something silly or awful. Oh God, this could be really bad if we get something awful. Anyway, before we get into that, of course, I want to remind everyone that if you want us to build your world, you can always go to our website, worldbuildwithus.com, where you can click the link, follow some instructions, and within a reasonable amount of time, we'll be building your world. If you want to follow us on social media, we're on YouTube, where you can go and smash all the buttons that you want, including subscribe, and there's a bell or something like that. I don't know. You can also follow us on Twitter at Let's Worldbuild. Or if you'd rather converse with us more directly, you can go to our Discord, where we chat about all sorts of fun stuff, including world building and not world building. And of course, if you're feeling particularly generous, you can always go to our Patreon and give us money, where you get access to sweet, sweet patron-only goodies like patron-only episodes. That's called the Aphid Lounge, by the way. If you've ever seen a preview, that's what that is. Or you can get access to our patron-only Discord. You get 2 episodes instead of 1 for your prompts. And there's the Too Hot for Broadcast, which is stuff that basically hits the cutting room floor because of various reasons. A bunch of really weird and different reasons sometimes. But that's if you want to go and give us money on Patreon. If you've ever felt the need, hey, thank you so much for all your support. And with all that out the way, let's dive right into our Monster Mash.
It's now the mash.
Courtney, I'm assuming that you're going to play the proprietary music, The Monster Mash, right here. Also, how is that not public domain at this point? I am like shocked that's public domain by now.
Another 200 years.
No, it's not Disney. It's like it's only 100 and something, right? Because we just got like Winnie the Pooh just became.
I mean,
public domain,
their lovely behavior has made the same rules for everyone now.
Yeah, I know that it's pretty dog shit, but we're not here to talk about copyright law, Daniel. We're here to make monsters. And on
Copyright
today's
monsters.
Trademark
monsters.
That might be more accurate, actually. Yeah,
with the serials filed off.
No, because we keep those files. I think you know what I mean. But they're our monsters. It's okay. Anyway, we got some monsters to roll into. So let's figure out what the focus of this spooky monster jam is going to be. And our monster for this particular Monster Mash is, oh baby. I'm not sure if this one is mine, but I'm very happy that we're doing this one because it's a notorious boss monster. It has roots all over the place, and it is rife for all sorts of repainting. And oh boy, it is the Lich. One of my favorites. I am so excited we get to do the Lich for the Monster Mash.
My kind.
Well, to be fair, I feel like you're more of a mummy, but that's
cousins.
Fine, yeah. Yes. Yeah. Fair. Absolutely fair.
Yeah.
So yeah. Oh man, we've got the Lich. I'm fucking stoked about this one. Now we've got to see what kind of stuff we're gonna put the Lich through. So let's take a look. Roll some more genres and foci, I guess. Anyway, let's see what genre of Lich we're dealing with now. Oh boy. All right. So first of all, we got a space opera Lich.
Okay.
Which that's going to be an interesting one, I think. But I mean, now I'm just really curious to see how we do a space lich and then turn it into a space horror movie next time. That's
Yeah.
gonna be fun as hell. Actually, I'm very looking
I don't
forward to
think we've
that.
ever seen. I mean, I don't think I can think of a lich in space. I don't think I've seen that before, which is kind of cool.
Gideon the Ninth, the Locked Tomb series.
Oh
It's all
yeah,
about necromancers serving basically like a Lich
an
King,
immortal
more or
lich.
less. Yeah.
Oh,
I
okay,
would
cool.
probably argue that the Necrons from Warhammer 40K
Oh,
are
true.
close to
Yeah, I could see
liches
that
as
too.
well. Yeah.
Is the Gideon one more like fantasy sci-fi? Like, is it more like because I never I had the book and I didn't actually read it.
Yeah. It's
You know what I mean? Like, is it more like less a hard sci-fi and more fantasy one?
yeah, I
Yes.
would say sci fantasy for
Okay.
that one. Yeah.
I would agree with that as well. Yeah. Guys, we've got a theme that we've got to focus
Oh
on
yeah.
here as
Right.
well. Yeah,
Sorry,
no,
I'm just curious.
no, it's cool. We're very excited about liches, and that's totally justifiable. So the theme that we're focusing on for this particular lich is interesting. Okay, we've got love for our theme here.
Mm.
And the focus for this one is going to be a very important place. So, Courtney, kick us off here. What are you thinking? We've got space opera, we've got lich, we've got love, and we've got a very important place. I don't know why my brain initially goes to the Phantom of the Opera, talking about like the catacombs and like the underground. Hell, the opera itself is a very important place in that movie. Maybe this is what my brain is doing, but what do you think, Courtney? Kick us off this time with the jam.
Yeah, I think this pretty much is Gideon the Ninth, given the theme of love and all that. But no, I'm thinking like if we can bring in space by having the phylacteries be like split apart on different planets or like just set apart at really vast distances.
Sure.
And I don't know if the focus would be like on the Lich as a hero figure or if that's going to be our villain here. Obviously, we do want to make it extra spooky, given that it's the spooky season and all.
That is correct. Yeah. Yeah. So I would imagine that at most we can have the Lich be like a tragic villain, or like a very sympathetic villain. But I'm imagining that there is some kind of villainous nature to the Lich. Although that's not necessarily true. That's not inherently true.
It makes me think like perhaps we should that's something we should flip, like because the Lich is usually super evil and has achieved its state through some evil means. So I wonder if like the Lich is heroic in this sense in some way. And I also wonder, like when you mentioned love, it makes me think that its circumstances or the situation for it has to do with something that it had loved or lost.
Yeah. Okay. Hear me out on this one. The phylactery is some kind of radio communication device to a dead loved one that it can still talk to somehow. So like there's like either a radio in its chest or it's able to follow some kind of wavelength thing, or I don't know why, but I think the idea that it is, if we're making this a tragic hero or some kind of monstrous hero and we have love as the theme, I feel like there should be some kind of tragic space nonsense happening with a dead loved one, right?
It makes us also think perhaps time has a factor here, because if we're talking about large distances, that comes into play. And, time and love tends to be a pairing that works well. And I don't mean time travel, but I mean like those distances meaning something important.
Right.
Yeah.
Gulfs of time, right? Yeah.
Right.
Like going back to my idea about like phylacteries being split up across different planets and different areas of the universe, like maybe it has something to do with those are the places that this Lich traveled with their loved one over the course of their life, and like has such strong memories that like psychic resonance created these phylacteries or something like that. And maybe they can like still communicate with their loved one when they go to these different places.
Interesting. So they're like anchors.
Yeah.
That is actually really interesting. I like that idea that the Lich is effectively just touring the galaxy because that's what they did in life with their loved one, right? So, okay, one thing that we do have to kind of square, I think, because in my mind, we could do a space lich pretty easily if we just have it be like a consciousness that gets downloaded into sleeves of like new humans, kind of like altered carbon or something like that, or eclipse phase, right? However, what about this lich is undead, right? Like, I know that the body sleeve thing is one way to kind of circumvent that, like you get around the phylactery, the need of the phylactery, but I think that there should be some element of necromancy, element of undeadness when we're talking about this in some way.
Oh yeah, I have no desire to do body sleeves. I definitely want like some sort of undead thing. I was thinking like what if it has to do with like this person went very close to a black hole and got
I
really
love black
fucked up
holes.
from that, like died but not really, and that's why they're still alive and that's why they've been preserved in this really unnatural way.
Okay, I totally love that 200%
Yeah.
because I love black holes. Although
Yeah.
I want to, for both of you, I want us to first assess what liches mean because I think that's important in deconstructing it.
Yeah.
And like my feelings about liches is that one, it has something to do with a desire for immortality, right? Because these liches are separating their souls from their bodies so they can live forever. Now, a desire for immortality suggests to me a number of things like either FOMO on a cosmic scale, a longing for something you can't have, a forbiddenness, right? And when the Lich does this, there's a great price, right? That I think gets rid of their humanity. And as a consequence of that, they end up getting not exactly what they intended, right? Because you end up in this semi-living state, the undead state. So I think those are all thematic things to consider when we're building the Lich.
If we're stripping down the Lich to its barest component parts, to me, the Lich is more represented by there is a being whose soul is trapped into a physical object. And by trapped, I mean maybe they put it there, maybe it was literally trapped there, and they are resurrected physically through their soul being in that phylactery, right? I'm stripping it away from like the magical elements. Like, yes, there's immortality involved, but that is to the barest part that I can consider that is what a Lich is.
Yeah, like mechanically. What I mean is like thematically, right? So like the reasons why you do that has something to do with, like wanting either to live forever or get something you can't have. That's what so I wonder, like, whatever mechanically we do, it has to touch on that. Just like with the werewolf, there's this aspect of uncontrollable transformation. And what does that mean?
Sure.
I think it means something like being afraid of what you're capable of, maybe, but that's like a different monster,
Right. So thematically, the Lich, I think, represents ambition.
Yeah.
It represents the desire to go beyond your current capabilities, your current limits, right? Because immortality is, I feel like in many cases, is just kind of a consequence. It's not necessarily the goal.
It's a means to an end. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
You need to do that to accomplish something. Yeah.
Exactly right. And so, like that is just kind of consequential. Like, okay, whatever, who cares,
Because I mean, it could be the love in this situation. Because what Corey's suggesting so far, black holes, large distances have to do with time, and living forever can help you with that.
I think I have it. Okay. How about this Lich figure, right, is hurled so far away from the universe or so far away from their loved one, and then they are robbed of their faster than light travel. And so they can travel conventionally, but the distance that they have to travel will take so long that it's going to be like hundreds, if not thousands of years before they're able to return back, if they're able to get back at all,
My thought was going to the black hole idea was like if the loved one was sucked into a black hole and something happened to impact this Lich figure so that they're still alive longer than they should be, and they're like trying to get into the black hole and like communicate with them again, like save them from it, even though it's probably not possible. And maybe like that happened initially because of research that they were doing together.
Right.
That was sort of like, and to go into the ambition aspect of like they were trying to tame something that cannot be used.
And if we're looking at black hole mechanics, like one thing to consider too, which is to your point, is when you get past like the event horizon, the entire life cycle of the universe occurs from your perspective. And then the person observing the person falling in, they never truly see them fall in because I think because of the red shifting. So there's that aspect that the Lich would see them as never truly passing the event horizon, but then also the person on the other side has experienced the entire death of the universe as they fall into the black hole.
Oh, damn.
And okay, and then this kind of goes and can build back into what I was talking about previously, where there's an open line of communication that keeps them going. And they might just be hearing like echoes or like faint remnants of a conversation that this person fell into a black hole and had a lifetime to talk into this thing as they're dying infinitely, or like
is she the phylactery then? Because I say she is the beloved the phylactery, because think about it, if let's say there was a connection between them. This is similar to what you were saying, Rob, about traveling. Maybe there's some connection between them, and her falling in and it's being bound to her is what creates their Lich state, because now the phylactery is in a very protected place, and perhaps the Lich wants to get a hold of it, but the fact that it's beyond the world and beyond the event horizon, the Lich's its soul is what disempowers it or makes it what it is.
I like that. Yeah. And like maybe this person, this Lich in like the not in the black hole, is like they could be trying to save their loved one, but at this point they could also just be trying to die because they've been alive and like feeling this torture for so long.
I don't want to lose sight of your worlds thing either. Like maybe they were depositing something all the way to get to this black hole, because you were saying they were depositing multiple phylacteries. So maybe we need to reconnect somehow those other pieces of the Lich's self with it. I don't know how.
Oh, maybe Rob, to bring in your idea of like the vast distances and having to travel and like navigate your way around. Like maybe they had when they were both together, like traveled using wormholes, and that contains some of whatever's keeping him alive. And when the loved one went into the black hole, something happened to the wormholes where they like closed, or they aren't really an effective method of fast travel anymore. Or maybe they don't go where they're supposed to go. Like something changed in them. So that's part of why this Lich is like roaming around trying to figure out where anything is.
Okay. I'm liking all of these elements that we're creating here. So how do we make this scary? Like it's existential, right? Like it's extremely scary in an existential sense that you're an eternal nomad who just wishes for death, right? But if we were to toss this figure into another scenario, well, actually, you know what? That could still work, because then they're the hero in a horrifying situation. So maybe the horror that we're kind of evoking here is the horror experienced by the Lich figure as they attempt to get back and either seek death or seek their partner.
I mean, to answer your question, I wonder if it's if we're walking the sunshine event horizon line, right? So to invert what Courtney was saying about wormholes, the Lich's desire is to get to its phylactery, which is beyond an impossible place, right? It's past the event horizon. If it goes past the event horizon, it will be destroyed, because you'll be spaghettified and destroyed in the singularity. Right. So I mean, so this is an actual term with black holes. So
I just love the word spaghettified.
Right.
I love that. Yeah.
So maybe the seeking of the wormholes or whatever is on these planets is a means of finding a way past the event horizon, because wormholes would be one way to reach a space without going through the event horizon, right? And they're on these other worlds, and it has to travel these great distances and find these things, right? Whatever they are. Then I could imagine the Lich needing resources to do that, and a crew, and it's haunted by whatever horrors it's seen beyond the event horizon, like the movie. And those horrors could bleed into those around it. Then people may not know that it's a Lich. It may be ruthless and willing to do anything to get access to these doorways. And who knows if some of the doorways go to the wrong place and they're horrific, and the true doorway it's seeking, until it finds that true doorway, it's willing to sacrifice anyone.
Yeah. All right, hear me out. Incidental harbinger. It cannot help what it brings into the universe as it traverses. It just so happens to bring like all this horrifying, warped, like black hole nonsense as it traverses with it. So on the outside, it is this absolutely horrifying thing, but to it is simply trying to get back. Yeah. Fuck, that's pretty cool.
Or I was going to say possibly the opposite, where like it's been alive for so long that it's sort of lost sight of humanity in a way, and it's like it's actively tearing open wormholes in the universe to try to get where it wants to go, and in doing that, like it's creating these rifts that can devour worlds or can severely harm people or bring things that shouldn't be in this universe into the universe and so on.
Oh, is it turning wormholes into black holes?
Ooh.
Because wormholes connect 2 points in space, right? Black holes, we're not really sure what the fuck they do. They seem to be like insane indents in space that some theorize open up into other universes if it's a ring-shaped singularity. So perhaps like it's if it can collapse these wormholes into something else, maybe that's a way of finding a way to the black hole. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's like tearing open portals in an attempt to forcibly collapse it into a black hole or something like that.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Or you mean making like holes. Oh, so
Yeah.
maybe not wormholes. He's creating these collapses, creating black holes.
Yeah, exactly. Or trying to collapse reality, as it were.
Yeah.
And honestly, like a lone figure that is capable of like tearing worlds, because remember, this is a space opera, right? So we're talking vast swaths of empire and like alien races and stuff like that. But there's a lone figure who's just like on a path and creating like astral devastation in its wake. Like, I think that's a pretty cool concept that you can roll with. And it's appropriate to the scale of space opera as well, right?
And you can shrink it down when you were telling the story. You could pick one world, one such incident where he tried to collapse stuff.
Yeah, and follow like a group of adventurers trying to save their world and by extension their universe, probably.
You say adventurers, I say victims. You know, it's potato. You know what I mean? Okay, I fucking love that. That's a great place where we should stop and maybe pick that up next episode, because we've still got 2 more monster mashes that we've got to get through, y'all.
Forgot about that.
Yeah. All right, so we've got 1 monster. We're going to put a pin in that. Boop. There we go. Now, our next lich. The genre for this lich is going to be... Oh boy, we're getting the really weird ones this time, and it's quite interesting. So our lich for this time is going to be settling in the Weird West, which is a horror / magic Wild West setting. So I think that's going to be fun as hell to talk about. But let's continue to roll and see what we got. So the theme that we're dealing with this time is going to be secrets. We've got secrets, y'all. And then the focus that we've got is, nat 20. So that would make it an organization or faction. So we've got the Weird West with a theme of secrets. The focus is an organization or faction, and a lich is somehow involved. So Daniel, what are your initial thoughts with a Weird West, perhaps cowboy lich? Let's figure it out.
I'm picturing some kind of transit organization, maybe a train organ, I don't know, transporting a box that has something lichish in it, perhaps the lich's phylactery, and the person in charge of this organization, or perhaps someone in it, is aware that that's his phylactery, and therein lies the danger. Now, the Weird West part, that's up for grabs, but that's what I'm seeing. For some reason, I'm seeing the transportation of the phylactery being important in some old wooden box, in a train, or some other caravan, something.
Okay. So I think that if we're dealing with the Wild West, the Weird West, I mean, the iconic thing besides a horse is going to be the train, right? Like the connecting of America via trains is a little bit after the Wild West, but it signals the end of it. So I feel like having trains involved in some way, or having this lich be the leader of a railroad company, might be an interesting way to kind of start us off here.
Yeah. I think like the Wild West speaks to a lot of things, and one of the things is this enterprising spirit, right? So pioneering spirit, and I think the train, like you said, cutting through the American West symbolizes that.
What if they're trying to build a rail across some like particularly dangerous or weird area of the West.
Oh, like an ancient burial grounds.
Like something like that, yeah.
Well, I'm thinking about like what is the identity of the West, right? What would you consider when we're thinking like what pushed people out to the West in the first place? It's gold rushes, and then later on it's oil. And I'm thinking that if we have like an oil-based lich would be appropriate and also like a really interesting visual that we can kind of come up with as well.
Weird.
Yeah, mix like There Will Be Blood, like Daniel Plainview, and now give him immortality, and he's even more ruthless than before. Like, I don't know why. I suddenly love that concept, and I want to roll with it. What do you guys think?
I'm kind of picturing something more monstrous this time around. Like, is this lich has it been underground for a long time? Has it like soaked up the oil? Is it basically like a tar pit lich kind of thing?
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm thinking.
Okay,
Yeah, exactly. Like the Daniel Plainview character is the front, it's the face to the Lich organization, right? Like you have this ruthless person, but behind them, like you look at a character like Daniel Plainview and like, wow, that guy's an asshole, he's a monster. But in reality, he's the one holding back the real monster, which is this Lich trapped in some ancient like oil pit or something like that. I think that there might be something to that. Like there's a monstrousness to that concept.
Maybe there's more than one lich in this case. Like perhaps the one that's being transported is being transported home, and it's in that box. Then maybe it's like, I don't know, some barrel of oil. Maybe it's not a box. And when it reaches the place where they're drilling, what they're really doing is he's trying to crack open the place where all the others are, so that they can be extracted. And perhaps like, you know, this oil creature is in fact like a primal spirit that originally controlled the land in the ancient pre-human time, and that lets us speak to like the tension between, you know, the kind of early imperialist intentions of the West moving across the country versus those who lived here before.
I like that. Like the liches were like preserved in some ancient ceremony, and maybe they were like supposed to slumber for, you know, hundreds or thousands of years, and they've recently awoken and have to be like brought out. And like maybe this like enterprising figure is knowingly helping the lich because he wants some of that power too.
Yeah, or he is one. Maybe there are some that walk among us, but they're not as powerful, you know?
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, the cracking of the earth has awakened the liches, right? Like that's what we're suggesting here, that it's the enterprising of that. So it's like we're also kind of subverting the mummy a little bit here as well, where it's like you're opening something forbidden, and in this case it is like the blood of the earth, which is oil, right? So we take that, and then the enterprising person, it's not that he's a servant, he's trying to figure out the ritual to turn himself into a lich.
Oh, he wants to become one. That's cool.
Yeah.
Maybe he knows about this society, but he's kept it secret because there's a promise of XYZ.
Yes. And again, we go back to the theme of ambition, right? Like, how else can I accumulate wealth when I'm aging? And you can even make it an aging businessman as well, right?
So he must not know the full truth. That's the thing.
Probably
he
not.
knows like it'll give him immortality, maybe power, whatever, through the oil, like the magic oil, but he doesn't know what they actually are.
Right. He's become a baron. He's become a robber baron. And yet, what at the end of the day does that get him in the face of death? Right? Like maybe he's been maybe this is really spurred on by age, or maybe he's been diagnosed with a terminal disease. Something like that. That's like pushing him into lichdom, where he's like, I guess I've got to turn to black magic now, right? Like this is my only chance at survival. And when we do this, it doesn't make him any less despicable as a person, right? Like it's just that the lichdom is an extension of his already monstrous qualities, right?
Yeah, I'm picturing him as like a not too old, but diagnosed with something recently, like has these periods where he'll just like hack up blood, which is an interesting like visual juxtaposition with the oil. Right, exactly.
Thank you. I was like waiting patiently to shout that. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh man, this is all coming together. I fucking love this shit so fucking much. And then, okay, I'm also thinking that like if the ritual's successful, there is a moment cinematically that happens where he is effectively ignited, right, in oil. But at this point, his body is like a lich, so he like his skin like sloughs off, and all that is left is a burning black skeleton that is like still oozing with oil in some way.
Love it.
Yeah, like that is a fucking Wild West villain a Weird West villain at that. You know what I mean? Like you'd be fucking terrified of that shit. And then if we make oil the phylactery, like you're not killing that fucking lich.
Right.
At best, you're able to like put him to sleep for a while.
I mean, you've got to burn all the oil away, which is like destroying your own money. And that's the horror of it. You have to destroy all this gold, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Or perhaps it's a matter of like, well, we're just going to have to get good at stopping this lich because we all know we're not getting rid of all the oil. You know, like there's that kind of like tension that exists inherently within that, like, oh, this thing exists in a naturally occurring thing. We're never going to be able to fix it. We're fucked. You know, like there's that horror in that as well.
It's kind of like Fear the Light.
Oh yeah.
At least my run of are.
Oh man, this could easily fit into Fear the Light, like easily fit into it, no problem. Fear the Light, by the way, if you're not familiar with that is a series that we did with our friend C.R. Rowanson, one Mr. Clark, a while ago. That was one of our first Weird West settings. But yeah, that is a good one. Honestly, y'all, I know that we didn't spend nearly as much time with this, but I feel like everything kind of clicked so easily. I'm ready to dive into that third one right away. Where do y'all fit? Do we want to talk about this a little bit more? Do we need to answer any more questions? What are we thinking?
I just like the potential choice that if you run this as like an RPG, the party would have in terms of, are you gonna just try to deal with the lich over time and like continue profiting off the oil? Or are you gonna attempt to save the day by lighting up your oil fields? And then the really cool visuals that come about from that, like these,
oh man,
I mean, they happen in real life too, where there are certain spots on the earth that are just permanently on fire because of flammable stuff that just won't burn fast enough.
I'm also thinking like if you do this as a sequel, like your family has to reckon with your own greed or your original character's greed or something like that, you know, like there's like really cool thematic elements that you can build into that as well. Or if you want to make it like heart-wrenching, then it's like, I need this oil money to save my family or to save, you know, like if it's an indigenous person, like, hey, this is one way that I can actually make sure that we're not relegated to the reservation and genocide and extinction. Like there's so many ways that you can play this that are like morally difficult and also really fucking amazing. So yeah, I'm way into this idea.
I do like the idea of having a party that starts initially all with different interests rooted in greed, right? Like you're saying, but then part of the struggle narratively is for them all to come to terms to realize that they have something in common that's more important than that. And so they have to sacrifice those things in order to defeat this greater problem, you know?
Oh man, this is fucking great. I'm loving this so goddamn much. I absolutely love this. Shit. Okay. Yeah, we got to move on. We got one more monster. I'm really excited, overly excited actually. I got to calm down just a little bit. Let's roll some dice and hope that I can get there. Guys, liches are cool. I don't know if you know this, but liches as a villain, as a monster, are so goddamn cool. I'm so happy we got Lich on this one. Okay. Anyway, and the genre for this Lich is going to be we've got like a cousin to the Weird West, which is steampunk. I feel like there's some interesting stuff that we can go there. So let's start there. The theme that we're going to be working with is growth and expansion. And the focus of this particular scenario is going to be a villain. Well, I feel like that's a pretty easy one considering we're doing a monster mash with a lich. So we've got steampunk, we've got a villain, we've got growth and expansion. So one of my favorite settings, or a very, very cool setting that I really loved back when I read it, is the Iron Kingdoms setting. It is effectively what if mechs in fantasy, right? There is an age of steampunk where you also have magic people who control mechs that just tear shit up, right? But that's not what I'm going for. What I'm interested in is the idea that they had a monster type called the Iron Lich, which was this like semi-robotic, like it billowed like black smoke out of these like exhaust and all this really interesting stuff. And in my head, when I'm thinking steampunk and I'm thinking Lich, I can't help but imagine that there's going to be some kind of like it's way less fleshy than the previous two that we've dealt with. This is far more mechanical. It's far less human in shape and perhaps design than the other Liches. But there's one thing that I'm kind of interested in as well, because the Lich, right? There's the concept of the Lich, and oftentimes there is this association with the Lich being a purely magic-based user, right? I think it'd be really interesting if we could subvert that a little bit and maybe talk about a Lich who is perhaps maybe just like a barbarian or a fighter or something like that, and they're resurrected constantly. I don't know. I'm tossing out multiple ideas here, but I want to hear from y'all. What do you think? We've got a steampunk Lich with growth and expansion and a focus on a villain. What are we thinking?
Honestly, the first thing that came to mind would be like a steampunk version of Atom Smasher. Just like a person who's been, like, they start as human, but over time they've gradually either themselves or other people have worked to replace their human parts with mechanical ones. And I assume that at the point of where we're going to get into the story, they're like, it's a sliver of humanness left in them, like their brain and a couple organs or something.
Right.
What's Atom Smasher?
I was just going to say that, Daniel. Yeah. So for the listeners who don't know, Atom Smasher is from the cyberpunk world, who is a cyber psycho, basically someone who's been stripped of all their human parts and replaced with nothing but robot parts. And he's also just a fucking menace. Have you watched the anime, Courtney, the Edge Runners anime?
No, I only watched like the first 2 episodes.
Okay. Spoilers, Atom Smasher is in that anime, and goddamn is he awesome in that fucking anime. But anyway, that's Atom Smasher. I could definitely see that for sure.
I like the notion of some kind of mad scientist. Like that was my first thought too. Or someone, like you're saying in this case, someone experimenting, it sounds like, on themselves. And I think that fits in with what you were saying, Rob. Although I do think it's interesting that you wanted that the idea of the Lich not being magically focused. So that's kind of cool. So that makes me wonder, like, I don't know what the deal is with this Atom Smasher character, but it's like maybe they're not a scientist insofar as they're like someone who doesn't make their decisions based on like, you know, smarts. So how could we do that? That's the question.
Okay. I think I've got an idea about that. So we're talking about steampunk, right? Which typically in my brain says that there's going to be a lot of automata, right? There's a lot of like brass colored robots and like effectively mechanical golems, right? That's where my brain typically goes. What happens if we create this kind of rage brute, right? This kind of like spirit that is so furious at its own existence or furious in some other way that when it dies, right, when its body is smashed apart, it will lie dormant for a while and then find another golem that's being created, and it will infect or possess that particular thing. And so you get this recursion element where, you know, you have the phylactery, but then you take away the kind of intelligence that is usually associated with the liches to the point where it's just like this undying rage spirit or something like that.
Does that mean the person who commands it, they have to like call the spirit into the machine, and that's part of their lichdom?
Oh, so it's like a summoning ritual almost? Is that what you mean?
It sounds like you're saying there's this rage spirit that, when destroyed, seeks out a new golem, right? So then I could imagine someone wanting to control this monstrosity, and so they build a golem with the intent of bringing it on board. But I imagine there's some sacrifice for doing that on their part, that maybe they're not fully in control of themselves anymore because the rage golem links itself to the person who creates
yes.
it.
Oh my God, Daniel. Yes. No. We've effectively created Pumpkinhead, right? Like yeah. So Pumpkinhead is like an 80s movie. It's got Lance Reddick? No, who's the guy? No, Lance Reddick's not even close. Lance Henriksen, the guy from Jaws. You know who I'm talking about, right?
I don't know any actors of any kind.
Okay, that's true. I forgot who I was talking to. Yes, it's Lance Henriksen from Jaws, and also he's in Pumpkinhead. Basically, very briefly, he is this Southern guy, and a bunch of teenagers accidentally kill his son in a motorcycle accident. And he goes to the witch in the swamp and says, "They killed my son. I need like something to make them pay." And as a result, he summons Pumpkinhead. He is like linked with Pumpkinhead, right? So the spirit of vengeance is created, and he experiences certain things through Pumpkinhead's visage, and he experiences the pain of Pumpkinhead, all that stuff. And it's a monster in that one, but I don't understand why we can't just do the same with like golems and stuff like this in this particular thing, where, you know, it's the spirit of this particular being. It's not just an elemental force. I would like some intelligence to it, but I think that what we've got there is like you can absolutely do something like that, you know, and it doesn't even have to be a sophisticated robot. It could really just be like something really basic, and it's going to possess it and create something more powerful as a result. But I think that that's a really cool concept that we can roll with.
I'm a little confused because I thought we were not going to do magic, but the talk of like a rage spirit that inhabits stuff makes me definitely think that it's magic.
Mm-hmm.
Why weren't we doing magic?
Oh, I thought you said that you didn't want magic involved before.
Oh, I was saying the Lich is normally a magic user, so it's like hurling fireballs and curses and stuff like that. Like I was,
okay.
Yeah, I was mostly interested in the idea that the Lich is like a more mundane or more like melee focused, or perhaps just like a less stereotypical like wizard.
It does raise the question that you can have the person in charge of the Lich be Lich-like, but you also still have this monstrosity.
Yeah.
So who is the real Lich here? Is it the machine, or is it the man behind the machine?
Sure. I mean, what you can also do is, if you wanted to make it complicated, is you can have it so the spirit of that person inhabits the next version of the thing. So it's like, I don't know. I think there's some interesting stuff that we got going on there. I like that, Daniel.
I mean, it could just be rhetorical, like
yeah,
because it depends on what story you want to tell. Like if the story's following this crazy person who's like wants to build this machine for whatever reasons they have, and they're willing to make all the sacrifices, then the focus is on them, and they really are the Lich, and the monster is really incidental. It's an extension of them. Mm-hmm. If it's like somehow focused on the machine, it's a different story to tell, a weird one, but perhaps then the rage spirit is more of a character. You know, I could see, for example, I'm thinking of like a movie where you have like this brutish demon, and he has a personality, and he has his own issues and problems, and he's being manipulated by a wizard or something. And so the story is really about him and his concerns, and will this demon get free, and with evil things it has to do at the behest of this wizard. So now you turn the wizard into the villain, and the protagonist becomes the actual monster. So you could have that be the case with the rage machine. He keeps getting entrapped. Maybe it's like an ancient barbarian king that keeps getting entrapped in these machines, right, by this over time. And so it has a story to tell, and you can focus on it, you know.
Forced to do the bidding of the summoner. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm curious though, like what is the goal of the summoner? Because I feel like I'll be able to connect more with the story if like I know what they're working towards.
That's a good question.
Or like, what do we want to set this in like a typical steampunk Victorian kind of thing, or do we want to go elsewhere with steampunk?
Well, I think with if we keep the monster as it is, right, as this kind of like forced servant to some kind of summoner or other power, you can take the basic concept of that monster and then place it into a number of different scenarios that like will tell a really interesting story based on who the summoner is. Is this, you know, like an orphan who is building a golem in an attempt to wreak vengeance on someone? Or is it, like a philanthropist who's building a golem to wreak havoc on his business rivals, companies, and stuff like that? I think that if we focus just on the monster itself, you can have it so it's more like a pastiche where you can tell an anthology's worth of stories through the eyes of this particular rage spirit.
Mm.
So it's like short stories, and each short story is like someone comes upon these blueprints from this mad scientist from before. They build this machine. The barbarian is summoned to do their bidding. And then, like we start to see the interior life of this. So maybe it's told always through the interior life of the barbarian spirit, like at each service he's been put through. And the person that summons them, it's taxing to hear their story of the orphan who's bullied, who wants to kill the orphanage owner, right? So he's shackled into doing that. And then the next 100 years in the steampunk realm, he has to like wreck a Victorian dinner party because it's this petty rivalry between business owners, and so the barbarian's like, he just wants to be free and to move on to his Viking afterlife, but he's in the service forever of these petty, like kind of namby-pamby Victorian socialites in this particular setting.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think of Frankenstein in a way, in terms of like you have this person who creates this monstrosity that maybe they don't always know how to control it fully. And you may very well have like one of the stories could essentially be Frankenstein, where you have somebody who has no idea what they're doing and is scared shitless when they actually get to summon this creature. And like that's when it actually can gain freedom, when it finally gets like a master who just can't master it.
Or maybe they have a master who just wants to know its story. Like how interesting would that be if like, I'm here to interview you. This is why I've summoned you.
That could be the frame of the whole anthology.
Oh wait, you're so fucking right. Like that's what you tell the anthology stories.
That's perfect.
Yeah, that's a great novel. That would be a great novel because like you really get to explore a clash of values and culture. And a lot of primal feelings, right? Because this barbarian might be from, some Babylonian time, but it shows that we've had the same concerns as people since the beginning,
Yeah. And like somebody at some point mentioned like golem. So maybe it did originate with like a Jewish mystic who created a golem literally out of clay. And like that was the first iteration of it. And ever since then it's progressed technologically and stuff.
Yeah, you could do a lot with that. Oh man, that's really good. Fuck. God damn it, guys. Liches are so cool. You can do so much with it. They're so versatile. No wonder. God. Okay. We gotta stop. We could go forever. We could do an entire series on liches alone. In fact, I don't even want to take the liches off the monster mash because I want to do this again. But for now, we're going to stop. Because on next week's episode, we're going to take these 3 monsters that we've made and we're going to jam them in to monster jams. Well, horror jams. But for now, I'm going to call them monster jams, I guess. But anyway, that's going to do it for this episode of Worldbuild with us. Remember that if you want us to build your world, you can always go to our website, worldbuildwithus.com, where you can click the link, follow some instructions, and within a reasonable amount of time, we'll be building your world. We're on social media, on YouTube, where you can go subscribe, do all the YouTube things. We're on Twitter at Let's Worldbuild until Elon makes us pay for it. And then at that point, we're just completely off, Yeah. And we're also on Discord, where realistically, if you want to come chat with us more directly, that's where we'll be. And if you're feeling particularly generous, you can always give us money over on Patreon, where you can get access to sweet, sweet patron-only goodies. So many that I've already talked about that I'm just going to skip it for now. You can go to our Patreon if you're curious. If you've ever been like grateful or thankful for any of the ideas that we've given you, or if we just made you smile, you just give us some money as a thank you. That's going to do it for this episode of World Build with us. Remember that we love you very much, and we're going to get through this together. Until next week.